put it on there, it adds oil. You don't want to damage the finish. Yeah, they have extras.
No, I know, I've always left it, but I can.
There's the workbook that goes with it too. Oh, you got one?
Hopefully keeps me reading the Bible, so, seem to get through it.
Hi, Miss Nelma.
Good morning, Mitch. How are you?
Pretty good, are you?
Chrissy was there late too, and I watched her.
I'm here.
Yeah, okay.
So now that's gonna be a thing.
Get close. Just being here this morning was about all I could do.
Well, okay.
Have you had cataract surgery? I noticed you haven't been wearing glasses. Have you had cataract?
Yeah, just had my second one.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. I gotta have a little touch-up work done with
Yeah,
laser, but,
I
that,
think
that's
I
10
had
seconds.
Mine done probably 20 years ago, and then after a while I had to have the little laser thing. Takes, you know, maybe 5 seconds.
Some of them are 2 or 3 years later, and some of them are
Yeah.
a month later, which is mine's gonna be a month later, so. But they said 10 seconds.
But, you know, my eyes have not changed since I've had cataract surgery, so I'm glad you had.
Yeah, no, that, I am too.
Still only 2 valley people. Yeah. So I don't know if valley people just keep getting or.
Yeah, we're kind of getting close, like, this is good,
We're
good. Build it and they will come. Waiting list, we're waiting people.
Feeling okay?
Yes, Robert is pretty much done. He's pretty much done.
That's what Dad said.
Yeah, she never made her break away. And then she found out, well, I found out that he, was so married to his other one. It was a mess. Anyway, now this one,
This is good.
yes, praying that phase is good.
Praise the Lord. And the kids are okay?
Yeah, and they're always here with us. To see them go all together.
I was so happy last Sunday, because, you know, I felt like maybe things had not gone well with them. So that,
Yeah, so, nothing really well today, she was saying, but I think he's staying with Sean next week. I think that's what he wants. So,
that's great.
it's like 9 or something. Next door in case. I need help over there.
Pretty good, how you doing? Very good, good to see you. You don't ever. I'm ashamed.
John's. Thank you. Hey, you. Yeah. Thank you. How are you, Mary?
Good.
I would forget my head if it wasn't attached. That's what my mom always said. I think she's just right. All the kids.
Did it?
That was the last one I wanted to do that.
Glad you're talking today and not me.
You'd think this how to get along in church, you'd think that would not be necessary. But it shouldn't be necessary.
Should. We're in Romans 14. And a corollary to that would be 1 Corinthians 8. As we've all studied and talked about for quite a while, the Roman church was struggling with unity. They were Jews and Gentiles. They both had had their moments in the light, if you will, during the history of the Roman church. And they They were just not getting along. They were not getting along. And the apex of the book of Romans, I think, is Romans chapter 14, where he kind of brings it all together. The Jews didn't believe you could eat meat that was sacrificed in idols. The Gentiles didn't see any problem with it. And they were kind of, in some ways, possibly flaunting that in each other's faces. And Paul had, through the Holy Spirit, had about enough of that. And he gets to Romans chapter 14. Now, on Wednesday, we forgot to lay a little groundwork. I had it in my notes, I just didn't do it. Carolyn reminded me, and I appreciate that. Reconcile these two things for me, what I'm getting ready to read. In Galatians chapter 1, just going to read a couple verses. Paul said to the Galatian brethren, I marvel that you are turning away so soon from him who called you in the grace of Christ to a different gospel, which is not another, but there are some who trouble you and want to pervert the gospel of Christ. But even if we or an angel from heaven preach any other gospel to you than what we have preached to you, let him be accursed. Now, in Romans 14, he says that we shouldn't be judging one another. And we've all heard this from denominational people in the past. Well, that's your opinion. That's your opinion. Everybody's got one. And don't be trying to judge me by what you're doing here. How do you justify or reconcile, maybe a better word, Galatians 6, where Paul says there are some who are not following the gospel. They are perverting the gospel and going another way to, how dare you judge me, in Romans 14. It appears to be some sort of, it's a dichotomy, but it appears to be some sort of maybe something that's, Carol, yes ma'am.
Conscience versus salvation.
What does that mean?
There are things, and I know this is part of what we're talking about today, there are things that are not related to salvation, that you might have your opinion and I have mine, and so what? It's not a matter of whether you're going to be saved or not. Now, some people might want to make it that way, but we have to keep our focus on what the Word of God said in terms of the gospel and how we are to be saved.
Yes, very
and
well
what
said.
time we meet isn't one of those things.
Very well said. And we're going to talk about some of these matters of opinion, if you will, in just a minute. Mike, there's a lot of them, by the way.
Just said it, getting our noses turned up because they don't like the time we meet, or we're in this room or that room, or we've talked about it. What's the color of the carpet going to be? Are we going to have pews? Are we going to have chairs? What are we going to do? Those are all just conscience. Those are things that you have an opinion in. And I'll pick on Teresa a lot of times. She'll say something like that, and I said, "Is it bothering you?" Well, yeah, it bothers me. I said, "Well, go tell one of the elders. See if it bothers them." She goes,
Okay.
"Well, I don't think it'll bother them." I said, "Then what are you bothered for?"
Okay. John 17 and verse 17 says this, sanctify them through your truth. Your word is truth. So this is the truth. What Paul is saying here, that there's going to be a matter of conscience. There's going to be things that really don't matter, that are indifferent. Indifferent. In Spanish, they say más o menos, whatever, more or less. That's what he's talking about here, but he's not talking about the truth of the gospel at all. Greg?
I'll talk a little bit here. I like to analyze these things with extremes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the extreme of Jesus saying, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, no one comes to the Father by me. And then there's someone who's Muslim saying, Allah is the true God, and he says to do this. Now, can we judge between those two things? Well, it's easy, we don't have to judge, it's true.
Yeah,
The truth is this. What about Joseph Smith saying, I have a new revelation from God in the 1800s? I can see between those two things. And it's not an opinion in my, they might accuse me of having an opinion, but it's not an opinion. It's easy to see with the truth of the gospel that's there. As things get closer and closer to this is interpretation or not, it gets harder and harder to do that. And I think what Paul is talking about here in Galatians is clearly these things. Another gospel, someone saying there's another way, versus what Paul is saying here. It's a tough thing about whether to eat meat sacrificed to idols or not. Give each other room to work that out. And we can't be baited into the you can't condemn me for what I believe,
Right.
Because it's your opinion. And it's like, it's not my opinion if I read it in the truth.
Right.
I'm not interpreting anything.
Yep.
And so how do we deal it in the closer areas? That's a part of who we are and how much maturity we have. And that's what Paul, I think, is trying to train people. When you live in these areas where it is a little dicey, how do you treat each other while you're working through that?
Yeah, good point. And in Romans 14 or 1 Corinthians 8, did Paul say, now look, you strong ones, you better straighten these weak ones out? He never said that. He never said that. There's not one verse that says that. Did he say to the weak ones, you better keep nagging on these strong ones until they see it your way? Did he say that? He never said that. He's saying, won't you leave each other alone?
You stand before God.
Let it go. It's indifferent with God. Now, what Greg was saying and what, Galatians 1 says, there are things that aren't indifferent with God. And that's the stuff that he's revealed. But a lot of the stuff he didn't reveal, he gave us a brain to think with. And he never said, I've always wondered why he didn't, the strong, they didn't get anybody's grill and say, Paul says for me to straighten you out. He never said that. He didn't. There are things that don't matter. And here's our attitude. Look in 14 and starting, well, I'm going to skip around here a little bit, but look in verse 15. Romans 14, verse 15. Do not destroy with your food the one for whom Christ died. Now, they were having trouble. I eat this, you don't eat that. And he said, it's food. Forget about it. He says in verse 17, for the kingdom of God is not eating and drinking, but righteousness and peace and joy in the Holy Spirit. In verse 19, I think this is the overriding verse, really. Therefore, let us pursue the things which make for peace, and the things which one may edify another. So what does he say? Let's figure out a way to live in peace here, and things that don't matter, that aren't in the Bible, and edify one another. What does that mean?
Build each other.
Look for ways not to tear each other down. We got enough of that. Look for ways to build each other up. I've got some, put some things on the board here in a little bit on how to do that. But anyway, verse 20. Do not destroy the work of God for the sake of food. In verse 21, it is good neither to eat meat nor drink wine, nor to do anything which which your brother stumbles or is offended or is made weak. Now, who's the strong brother in this meat, drink area? The one who's eating and doing and drinking, or the one who is offended by that? Who's the weak brother? Now, they both think they're strong. We've all had those kind. I'm the strong one here. Well, actually, you're not. But who's the strong one and the weak one there?
I would figure the offended one would be the weak one because of,
Yeah. But here again, his conscience, is that important?
Yes.
Absolutely. His conscience says, I can't do that. Well, what does Paul say about that? Let it go.
Yeah,
Let it go. It does not matter.
doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Well, and that person shouldn't partake. If
their
it
conscience
bothers,
bothers
if their
them.
conscience
No.
bothers them, then they should not. They
That's
should
right.
abstain.
What happens if
Sin.
he sins? If I keep cajoling and pushing, you know there's nothing wrong with this meat, don't you? Which there's not. But in his mind it is. I saw that coming out of that temple where they sacrificed meat. And I've been taught my whole life, my father, my grandfather, back, on and on, and I can't do it. Now, what should the strong brother do there? Drop it. But they weren't doing that, it appears. Now, I've got a couple things here. The strong brother, okay, keep this in mind. The strong brother encourages the weak brother to eat. Doesn't say he ate yet, that's not my question, but who sins there? The strong brother encourages the weak brother to eat. The strong brother. Now, if the weak brother eats, he sins too. The strong brother puts a stumbling block. We've all stumbled on things and tripped and fallen and all of that kind of thing. Don't put a stumbling block in front of your brother or your sister. If you do, who sins? You do. You do. The weak brother condemns the strong brother for eating and observing that meat. The weak brother, he just won't let it go. Who sins? The weak brother. The weak brother. Let it go. That's what Paul is saying here. Now, we don't have any, I don't think we do, have any trouble with meat eating. I hope you don't, because you're wrong if you do. No. We all love our meat. Steaks, and you fill in the blank. That's not a problem today. What is a problem today? Oftentimes, and I got a whole list of them here, and I'll see how many you get. Before I do that, Brother Robert Turner, who's dead now, but we knew him. We knew his brother real well in Kentucky, known throughout the world, really. He wrote this. He said, your brother or sister is not your servant to be judged by your feelings, nor are you his servant to be so treated. We belong to God, both of us. That sums up fairly well Romans 14 and 1 Corinthians 8. Now, having said that, excuse me. Number 2 in your book says, can you give some examples of matters today? We're going to talk about the drink here in a little bit, Carolyn, toward the end. Can you give some examples of matters today that would fit into Romans 14 admonitions? This would be issues the Bible doesn't really mandate, maybe alludes to, but doesn't mandate or forbid, that are not salvation issues, which is what Carol was saying. Not about truth, scriptures, salvation, not about that. But sometimes brethren feel strongly about. Now, I will tell you, I've got probably 10 of them here. I can debate either side and make a strong argument either side. I can. I have. Give me some.
Holidays?
Woo!
Politics?
I'm going to do just, who doesn't like holidays? Okay, that's all right. You don't have to like them.
Right.
Now, this is a long time ago. We first married. We always had a Christmas tree. Still do. We've always had a Christmas tree. And preacher where we were, and I love the man to this day, he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. Now, he was over at our house quite a bit, or I'm gonna call it a house, a little apartment. We never invited him over during the holidays when we had a tree. Is that Romans 14?
Yes, yep.
Yeah, I can have a tree. There's nothing to that tree. Holidays, family get together, we eat, all that. I got no problem with that conscience-wise. He did. So we could have rubbed it in his face, and we would never have done that. Come on over, and he sees a Christmas tree there, and then I start preaching to it. No way. Would never do that. So holidays, it's not just that holiday. Could be lots of holidays. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Now, not everybody, some are on both sides of that. That's okay. It's okay. What else? Politics, someone mentioned. But you're right. You're right.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Now, one side's right and one side's wrong, but that's another story. No. In the overall scheme of things, of us getting to heaven, it doesn't overly matter. Okay. Another one.
Like the order of things that are done in worship, like when you do the communion, when you do the offering, how many songs you sing.
Yep.
But I was always raised, guess what? Don't mean nothing. It doesn't matter. As long as what?
The components.
As long as we sing,
We're singing.
as long, on the first day of the week, as long as we give, as long as we take the Lord's Supper.
Right,
What about time? You know it's gotta be 9 o'clock.
right time, exactly, that's another one that's.
Or the number of times we meet on Sunday.
Yeah.
That is a.
Yeah. There are people that have a lot of heartburn. Not as much as it used to be in the United States. How can you not meet on Sunday night? Lord said meet on the first day of the week. Sunday night, I can make arguments both ways. Started in World War II, shift work, we won't get into all that, but
If we do meet on Sunday nights, we should go to midnight.
yeah, because they did meet at midnight, the Bible says. Plus, they met in an upper room. I'm afraid we're a little light on the upper room thing. Those are just drapery items. Those are just, oh, by the ways. But make sure you meet on the first day of the week. Remember my son. Give, sing, pray. Make sure you do that.
Right.
Don't matter about the other. Good one.
Before we leave that one,
Yeah.
maybe the time of worship's not gonna offend anybody or
Right.
whatever, but like
Generally.
Lord's Supper on Sunday night.
We're
back-
going, yes.
back when Sunday night was a more common thing, probably falls a little bit more into the
Yep.
having some heartburn either way over that. If I got ahead of you, sorry.
No. That was on my list.
It seemed to fit.
People have strong feelings about that. He said, take the Lord's Supper on the first day of the week. Did you do that? Now, I can make an argument both ways, a fairly good argument on both sides of that. I have my opinion. I'm going to leave it at that. But there are people who don't, who their conscience will not let them take the Sunday. You know what? God bless them. Well, we should try to talk them out of that. No, we shouldn't. Their conscience won't let them do it. They don't have to do it. But take it on the first day of the week. You go back to Numbers 9, back when, remember they went to Moses and said, we missed the Passover because we were out of town or we touched a dead body. And Moses didn't know how to answer that. He said, let me get with God. And God said, I'm going to make an exception here. Instead of the first month on the 14th day, I'm going to let you take it on the second month on the 14th day, unless you blew it off. But if it was legit, I'll let you take it another time. That wasn't the norm. But so I can make that argument, but I can also make an argument together and all of that. The bottom line on that is, some feel very strongly, and that's okay. But that's a good one. That's a good one. I've heard people say, I feel so strongly about it that we're supposed to take it together. I took it this morning. I'm going to take it Sunday night too when the others are taking it that missed. Okay. Lord didn't say you couldn't take it 2 times. He said take it on the first day of the week. If your conscience says that's what oh, fine, you do that. I got no problem. Got no problem with that. That's good. That's legit. That's today. Maybe not as much as it used to be, but it used to be a big issue, but it still can be.
How about use of the building?
Whew. Ooh, boy.
Carol.
Keep moving.
Bullseye.
Keep moving. The building, is this a holy place?
No.
No. Not like the temple or the tabernacle or those kind of things. No, it's not. The building is built to worship God. Could we meet under a tree? They do in Africa. We worshiped under a tree one time. Is that legit?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Could we meet in one another's house? They did in the first century.
People still do.
It's okay. It's okay, Mike.
True story on that. So Lisa and I decided when we got married, we went to the elders and said, hey, we'd like to get married in the building. So we're not going to have to discuss that. Because the building is used for worship. And it's, that's what it's for, that's what the money's for. And bless R.J. Stevens, he went to battle for us and overturned that and said, the king called us up and said, y'all need to get married in the building, when would you like to have it?
Yeah. Difference of opinion.
Difference of the
Now,
opinion.
there are people, now here again, many of us can make an argument and a good argument on both cases. I can do it. It's a matter of judgment. Do we all agree, at least up to a point? Now, I'm not talking about having a coffee and donuts and fellowship hall and Thursday night, movie night, which some places do, or having bingo. I'm not talking about that. No way. Can we have a funeral in the building?
Yes.
Some say you can't. Here's why. I lean toward that myself, but the elders here, at least, a matter of judgment, came up with the decision years ago. Don't mean it's, couldn't be changed. Now you've got, as long as the gospel's being preached, which it would be at a funeral, right? God said you come together. It's better to go to a funeral. We were at one yesterday. There are more life's lessons learned at a funeral than at a party. Bible says that. They sang songs yesterday at that funeral. Okay, good. The rub with some comes, and here's where it comes with me a little bit. You've got kids getting up and talking. You've got women talking during this worship service, if you won't think of it like that. You never know what they're going to say. And we've done that here. Then you've got parking lot attendants a few years ago who was not a member here, whose wife died, was not a member of the church that you read about in the New Testament, wanted to use our building. Well, now it gets sticky. You have issues like, same with marriages. You're preaching a sermon. But then you have people who want homosexual weddings in the building. Well, to be consistent, you said y'all use the building for that. Be careful. If you don't want to end up in court. So what we finally decided as elders, years ago, you better leave the building alone for what it's designed for. Because if you open this can of worms up, you better be careful. Because now you're going to get in some legal issues. So we said the safe thing to do, we'd be in court in a heartbeat. Safe thing to do, let's use the building for what it was designed for, to worship. Is there anything wrong with having a funeral? No, I don't think so. But where do you stop it? Is it just for members? So that's a tough one though. And I see both sides. And I can make an argument for using it or not using it. I think God didn't specify that. Now, to build a gymnasium out here, or to have a cafeteria, and to spend the Lord's money on coffee and donuts and all those things, and on the building itself, I can't read any scriptures to justify that. It's just not there. So, that's a tough one. Greg?
I was gonna move us to another one, unless you're feeling some more on that one. There's another one that we've seen in the last 5 years that taught us that we as 21st century Christians need this lesson more. Let's think about COVID. Think about what we avoided here that other churches had. Divisions over masks. Divisions over whether we can take the Lord's Supper with the old chalices versus pass it. And there were churches that had had to have two services because people couldn't sit in the same room with one another and tolerate each other's opinion of that. And
Live streaming.
And then live streaming and all the other pieces of that. COVID exposed that we have the need of giving each other room and not pointing our fingers at each other over things that, quite frankly, the judgment is you're getting into my safety. Well, I've got residual cold today. Am I getting into your safety today? You know what? All those kind of things that we saw going on in different churches that, God blessed us. We did not see that going on inside of this church from you all who were leading at the time, which, I commended you for then and do now as well. So all those kind of things show us, though, that this can pop right up with a new issue in the church. And unlike maybe the building issue where the elders do have control of what's done with the building and doing that, COVID was one where everybody had their own opinion and they had their own information, and the more we learn, who knows what the truth was at that time.
No, that's really good. Boy, the elders, we spent a lot of sleepless nights over this one, and meetings about, get the government, got this, says you can't meet. Legally, you cannot meet for a while. All these health mandates, and we didn't for about a month. We did the streaming, and finally we just decided to let the chips fall where they are. We're going back. Some didn't meet for months and months and months, or longer, and we couldn't do it. Our conscience wouldn't let us do it any longer. We're opening it back up. We get arrested, we get arrested. But that's a matter of judgment, and there are people that wore masks for a year or two. I didn't, not going to. They're not bringing these masks back anymore for me. Mitch is done. But we could have written their case, and what are you doing with that mask? You need that. We didn't. You want to wear your mask, you wear your mask. I didn't like that, but that's a matter of opinion. Mitch needs to keep his mouth closed. What about jewelry?
That's a good one.
Ooh. I'm listening. I have my opinion. By jewelry. Well, the
American flag pins too. We're
Hey.
in there.
Leave that one alone now. That's not a matter of opinion. Michelle.
That's when my opinion has changed on over the years, actually. I don't really know when it happened or why it happened, but maybe just thinking maturity, I don't know. But I felt like we were taught that, like, if people who wear a cross, so we grew up in a heavily Catholic area, like that's just kind of the region of the country we grew up in, and that was a symbol that most Catholic friends wore, and so to not look like that or to not send that message, you didn't wear a cross because that's what they did. It was more of a, not a battle, but that's what that showed. And then I feel like I've changed that. Maybe it has since I've just lived here and I've gotten older, and that's less of a Catholic faith based region, now I look at it more as it's a symbol that, I'm a believer. Now, I don't wear one, but I actually don't have a problem with it at all. Again, that's not about my opinion,
Yeah.
but I feel like maybe it's a region thing, I'm not sure.
Growing up in the South, we were taught, you don't do that.
Yeah.
What are you, Catholic? I had good friends who were Catholic. It's not a matter of, being good people. I just, but that symbolized some of the other things that they have, idols, if you will. But I have my opinions about that now too, and I kind of lean toward that we have sayings in our house. As for me in my house, we'll start. He said, to keep it before your eyes when when you wake up, when you go. To me, that's a symbol that I'm a believer. Now, could it be? Yes, I can make an argument the other side too. That's your call. Yes, I think it has changed somewhat. Anybody have any other?
I was just gonna add to that, cause I am in the same boat, cause with mom being raised as a Catholic, and then when she converted over and learned and everything, that's kinda how I was taught too, was
Yeah.
because it was so heavily pushed in mom's, growing up and everything, and it just caused her to remember so much of that, and she had left that.
Right.
That it was kinda like, yeah, let's, not, cause we don't wanna be.
Don't put it in her
thought
face.
as-
Yeah.
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 So,
stumbling
but
block.
I'm kind of that same thing
A
now,
stumbling
and
block.
maybe it's
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
being in Gilbert, it's not heavy Catholic or
Right.
anything, but.
Be fully persuaded. Remember that's the overriding thing here. Be fully persuaded in your own mind. If you got doubts, you better leave it alone. That's what Paul's saying here. Fine clothes versus overalls. Now in the South, you pretty much had to dress up to the nines every service, or you probably not gonna make it. They wouldn't say that, but that's what they thought. And a man comes in with blue jeans, no church. Some Broncos family were there. We're on a Wednesday night, and Vista came in with blue jeans. They took her aside and talked with her. Come on. Come on. If that's what you want to do, you wear a tuxedo. But just be here. A lot of people in the South in the old days, all they wore was overalls. Guess what they did on Sunday? Put on clean overalls. The Lord don't care about overalls. Now, can you take it too far? Yes. You can. You can. I'm not saying dress is not important. I'm just saying,
Your attitude behind it is.
yeah, it is.
Well,
It
James
is.
gives us an example of that. If somebody comes in in fine clothes and you give them the best seat,
Yeah.
somebody not dressed up, well, you sit here at my feet.
James said that, didn't he? Now, the other side of that would be, and I've used this one before, and I see it. We're worshiping the great King of the universe. And if we were going before the President of the United States, would you dress like that? No, we'd all be dressed up. We worship a person a lot more powerful than the President of the United States. I've heard that said, and I see the merit in that. I can make an argument for that, but it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter if you want to wear polka dot socks. It's all right.
It can go the other way too, because I remember seeing women who would dress like extremely extravagantly at church with like almost like prom gowns and extra jewelry and very showy, which was like attracting attention to her and how she was dressing. It was a distraction.
Yeah, it's a distraction.
Right.
And like Michelle said, the attitude. Now, it's hard for us to judge other people's attitude. I don't mean to say that either. But if you're doing it for show, you better let it go. Carol?
You have to think about modesty, and
You
modesty
do.
isn't provocative clothing. Sometimes it can be, like Jennifer was explaining, showy.
you know,
If you're drawing attention to yourself, you need to reconsider. Right,
but
right.
that's you judging them. You don't know what their heart is while they're wearing their finery. I don't. But modesty, without a doubt, bingo, Carol. Modesty, without a doubt, has to be primary. But here again, we come from a place where, particularly your aunts, I mean, they had the high heels on. It wasn't to be, look at my high heels. It was, they dressed up to go to church.
And women didn't wear pants.
Women did not ever wear pants in Kentucky, ever. And you know what?
If it bothers you, then you shouldn't.
Yes.
You know?
But if it bothers your conscience not to wear that I can't wear pants as a woman, okay, good on you.
Then don't.
Right.
Then don't. But if you want to wear pants, I'm not going to sit up here and say you can't. Here we go.
You skipped covering, head covering?
I'm coming back to that
Oh,
one. That's
okay.
going to be a tougher one.
Okay.
We live in a society of tattoos and piercings. Particularly, I'm talking about, I put men's intentionally. Women have pierced, and I think they look really nice on women. I got no problem. Now, yeah, a person, go ahead, sir.
I was saying on tattoo, I'm pretty much covered in
Sure.
tattoos. Got them when I was younger.
Yes.
And now, I personally feel like it's a sin. I don't think it's right
Yeah.
to get a tattoo.
Yeah.
I have a whole different, even though I'm covered, I feel like, you know, your body's your temple.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of weird. I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know if you're there.
I appreciate you bringing that up. Sometimes as we grow, we learn, some of those things are undoable.
Right.
So, but a person comes into church, male or female, and they've got tattoos, what are we supposed to do?
Nothing.
Do the best.
Come on in.
Yeah,
Come on
yeah,
in.
no, I get that part.
I hope your tattoos are pretty good.
Right.
See, and I think completely opposite to him, and I have tattoos, but I view the body as a temple, but I view it as decoration of the temple. As long as you're not using your tattoos as an idol, your tattoos mean something personally to you, just like your clothing, just like your hairstyle, just like your earrings.
Okay,
So my tattoos are for me.
okay. Some people have them to draw attention. Back to that again. Be fully persuaded in your own mind.
Right.
And it's not really for us, because you can't undo them. It's not for us to say, well, you need to spend $50,000 to go good. No.
Right.
Would I do it? No, I wouldn't. The earring, my dad would pull my ear and earring off. I'd only have one ear.
You don't like needles. Oh.
No, I'm getting better at them. No, I don't. We may or may not like these things. Does it matter?
No.
According to Romans 14 and 1 Corinthians 8, it does not. It does not. Well, if it was me, I would. I know, but he's talking about you. Right here. Now, the covering. The covering.
Head covering.
I have a strong, I think I can almost make a scriptural argument on this, but it's got a little bit, so I'll let it go. That the covering was for first century, it was a custom in the first century, but there are people today, particularly in the South, again, I can keep throwing that out, but in the South, where they do wear a covering because of 1 Corinthians 11.
You're talking women
Women
in worship.
in worship.
Right.
Now, I'm not going to question their heart. I don't believe it's scriptural, but yet there is an element of that where there is some judgment. So I'm going to have to cut some grace here, some slack. What I find unusual. In the first century, they wore, mostly it was a covering over the face. They don't do that. And it's not supposed to be to draw attention to you. What does it do in our society?
Draw attention.
It draws attention to you.
It's different.
Now, and particularly when they take it on and off, 50 times during the services, it's distracting to me. So I don't like it, but I will cut people some slack as long as they don't push it. I'm not gonna push it on her, or him, her. And but don't. If you start getting this as the scriptural way to do it, now we're gonna have a problem now. Because I can almost prove that's not, but I will cut you a little grace here on that and slack.
You know, we have these beautiful people that have been here 3 Sundays now. I don't know where they're from. Very exotic dress. But to them, that's the way they dress. I think it's beautiful.
I think it's a beautiful.
And they seem to be the sweetest
Yeah.
people.
Yes.
And they're not doing it to draw attention.
No.
They're doing it because that's how they dressed in the country where they came from.
Yes, I've
With
been
the
in those
exotic
countries.
headdresses and
I've been in those countries, and they, well, we had Cameroonians, or whatever, say, there in Sierra Leone, but the Sierra Leone women dressed to the nines with their, they didn't have much money, but they were colorful and had their headdress and all. Fine.
I think they're beautiful. They sit right in front of me every Sunday, and they're the sweetest people and the most well-behaved children.
Yes.
I don't know what country they're from, but
Cameroon.
I'm just,
Cameroon.
where,
Cameroon.
well, I didn't know that.
It's in, yeah,
I'm just
northern.
thankful they're here, and hopefully they feel comfortable being here.
Now, no, you're right, no. Long hair, short hair.
Yep.
Getting personal now.
Hair.
Hair. Smarty.
Or no hair.
Smarty. 1 Corinthians 11 says it's a sin for man to have long hair.
I've heard that a lot.
Now it says that.
It does. It does.
Now, here again in the South, a lot of women, even yet, my grandmother never cut her hair because she thought it was a sin. Women are supposed to have long hair. Same thing, 1 Corinthians 11. Women have long hair, men have short hair. Now, we have members of the church with an honest heart, occasionally, have long hair. And women, and what is long hair?
Right, define long hair,
That's it.
exactly.
Define it.
Can't do it.
I can't define it, but I'll tell you this, I don't want to see it.
Wasn't Jesus, I mean, I assume,
I don't
did
know.
Jesus have long hair, or do we even know?
We don't know.
Oh, okay, it's just
We-
the pictures.
No, we see the pictures, that's a good point, but,
That's men's interpretation.
excuse me, women have short hair. Women do have short hair, they define short. I can't, just don't want to see it. And I think probably the overriding factor was, when I look at a man, I want to make, he looks like a man, and a woman looks like a woman.
That's what I think it is too.
From all angles.
Yeah. You can come forward now when we have No, but I hear you. I don't know. I know what 1 Corinthians 11 says. I know during the cultural times, I get all of that. I can't do it. My conscience won't let me do it. But I don't know that I'm going to stand in somebody's way that comes to church and is a good Christian, and for some reason he has a little bit longer hair. Do I like it? No. But can I say it's sin? Not overly, not really. Greg and then Michelle.
So what's interesting in our journey in Romans, and as we get to this chapter that he's applying these thoughts to the eating of meats, asking us to apply it all over. He's already dealt with the situation of what happens when it used to be God's law to be circumcised and now it's not. How do you treat each other, right? So we talked a lot about circumcision in those early chapters about all that, and the conclusion of this is, don't make them do something that's now just a cultural sign.
Yeah, cultural thing.
We've also talked about things that, what happens when Christians are outliers to their culture in the way they dress? Like wearing a head covering in the first century, if a woman did not wear that, she would have been an outlier to her culture.
Yeah.
Now that's not the culture, but where we're at. If we move to a culture like in Saudi Arabia, you'd have a whole different way to
Yeah, you would.
process this. But think about that, when you become an outlier to your culture on something that is not mandated by God, there's this transition period of when you're moving out of this and moving to something else. And what's Paul really telling us in chapter 14? Cut each other some slack.
Yep.
Recognize that there are people that are gonna be on all points on the spectrum of this transition, of thinking one way to realizing I don't have to think that way. Don't make it an issue that drives them away from God.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what comes here, because there's so many things we can put on this list that are gonna be like that as
Yeah.
our own culture changes.
Yeah, now, I'm coming, Michelle. Now, the thing with this, whichever side you're on, you will answer to God for being on that side. You better make sure you got it right. 100% in your brain housing group. You better have it. If you got any doubts, he's gonna call you, gonna hold you accountable for that. Michelle.
I was just more in a synthesis mode. One of the notes that I had taken from his book, in conclusions, is I need to be more concerned about others than I am about my rights.
Yes.
So I need to believe that, but like, I need to be more concerned about, am I bothering somebody else with something that really doesn't matter? I would never. Like, don't do that. When we know that it bothers someone, we would put others before ourselves.
Yes. Paul said, if my eating meat, I ain't got no problem with it, makes you stumble, I'll quit eating meat. In our society, what do we see on TV every day?
Do what you want to do.
My rights.
Yeah. You do you.
No. Yeah. Paul said you got no rights if it offends your brother or sister. Now, real quick, I know we're about done. Number 3, how should brethren act when they disagree strongly about matters that do not pertain to salvation? Give me some, pardon me, some one-word attitude. Respect, like it.
Agree to disagree.
One word.
Under 3.
Oh, okay. I cut you a little slack. What else?
Grace.
Grace. What
Understanding.
else? Understanding.
Patience.
Patience. Boom. Gotta
Love.
be patient with one another. Because guess what we want when it comes to us? Patience.
Love,
Understanding.
Patience. Understanding, love, sympathy, maybe not sympathy, empathy, and so on.
Treat
But
other
make-
people like you wanna be
Yeah.
treated.
Now, we maybe have a study about this, but it was brought up about, he said eating and drinking. Drinking? What's he talking about here?
Jack Daniels? No.
No. Drinking wine. Now here, real quickly, this is an oh, by the way, for what it's worth department. And I've got a whole study on this. I've studied this hard a few years ago. The word in the original language for wine is oinos, O-I-N-O-S. In the first century, wine, and some of it was fermented. The Bible talks about that. Some of it talks about wine hanging on the vine. Is that fermented? Call it wine. It's not. Grape juice. But even, didn't have a lot of water, so good water supply then. They would cut or dilute, in some cases, 50 parts of water to every 1 part of fermented juice, wine. I've heard as high as 50, 10, 20, 30, or so on. So, it would take a 55-gallon drum, and you die from drowning first to get drunk on that. Now, compare that to wine today.